Wonderful Saloon, a series of New York narratives and character studies as pointed, various, and haunted as the stories in Dubliners. Mitchell's preferred precincts included Times Square, the Village, the East Side saloons, Harlem, and perhaps most of all, docks and piers. He was not much interested in the good and the great. As he had been in his newspaper work, he was drawn to the visionaries, obsessives, imposters, fanatics, lost souls, the end is near street preachers, old gypsy kings and old gypsy queens, and out freak show freaks. But now his work took on a greater depth. The jokiness found in his newspaper pieces, collected in My Ears Are Bent, disappeared. The tone is more mature. There are shadows in the rooms, sadness in even the funniest voices. At Ross's New Yorker, Mitchell found his way. The most prized possession in my office at the magazine is a photograph of two men, the closest of friends, who set the standard for nonfiction writing in their time. It is a photograph of Mitchell, slender, dapper, impish, and A.J. Liebling, a Rabelaisian character in both girth and spirit, sitting in wicker chairs under a craggy tree in eastern Long Island. The two men are laughing more than is absolutely required for a photograph, the result perhaps of the empty wine bottles arrayed in front of them. Mitchell and Liebling often shared turf and characters. They were drawn to the marginal men and women who could talk, the fight trainers, the rogues, the telephone booth Indians. But in language they were as different as Chekhov and Gogol. Liebling wrote quickly, furiously, faster than anyone better, better than anyone faster. His sentences were baroque, arch, full of digressive comedy, except when he was at war, where he was all business. Mitchell was no less funny, but he was precise, haunted, restrained, and exquisite. His colleague Roger Angell once said that Mitchell's writing stood firmly and cleanly in your mind, like Shaker furniture. Even when Mitchell wrote about circus freaks or barroom types, there was no kitsch in his portraits. His subjects were not characters. His settings were not tourist destinations. One of his bases of operation, McSorleys, the ancient saloon off Cooper Square, was, like Mitchell himself, dark and melancholy, a gaslit, shadowy place of the 19th century as it lingered into the 20th. The backbone of the clientele is a rapidly thinning group of crusty old men, predominantly Irish, who've been drinking there since they were youths and now have a proprietary feeling about the place. Some of them have tiny pensions and are alone in the world. They sleep in Bowery hotels and spend practically all their waking hours in McSorleys. In the early stories, Mitchell's subjects included Commodore Dutch, who gave charity balls to benefit himself, Arthur Samuel Colborne, who, as the self-declared founder of the Anti-Profanity League, toured the bars of Yorkville preaching against swearing, and, most important, a well-born son of Boston named Joseph Ferdinand Gould, who graduated from Harvard in 1911, abandoned an archaeological expedition where he was measuring the skulls of Chippewa and Mandan Indians in North Dakota, and came to settle in the bars and rooming houses of Greenwich Village. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him, a little man in a shabby suit who declared that he had mastered the language of seagulls. He was going to translate Longfellow's verse into seagull. He told everyone that he was writing an epic diary, a literary tour de force, to be called An Oral History of Our Times. He thought of himself as the last bohemian. Some are in the grave, some are in the loony bin, and some are in the advertising business. With his barroom blarney and a few choice excerpts of the diary, Gould won the notice of Ezra Pound, E. Cummings, and Malcolm Cowley. And because he was an ear-bender without parallel, he won the notice, too, of Joe Mitchell, who published a profile of him in 1943 called Professor Seagull. The omnibus you hold, dear reader, first appeared thanks to Dan Frank at Pantheon in 1992.